So welcome everybody. I am Catherine Bell and I'm with Peter McCoppin. And Peter McCoppin is an amazing human being. He is a former symphony conductor, a national broadcaster, and now an executive coach. So he's very, very, very inspiring. So we're talking about leadership in challenging times. And right now, I know a lot of the leaders that we work with are wondering how to communicate and what kind of messages they should be sending their team. So Peter, what are 3 tips that you have that you wish every leader knew right now?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the pleasure of your company, Catherine, and for initiating this opportunity. Well, certainly the first thing would be to stay grounded in your own core values. And those, to me, especially now, I think that those values must be humility, vulnerability, empathy, compassion, and essentially love.
Mm.
So if every one of our chosen behaviors, all of our decisions are grounded and centered in those values, I think that is, first of all, that's foundational. The second thing is, I think that we have to become that which we wish to attract. So to lead by example in all things, to be mindful of our intention, to be deliberate in our action, to build that tremendous collegial resource of all the people around us, that what we do together is in concert. It's not just coming from some particular unilateral bias, but rather is generated in an experience of community, of collective wisdom, collective knowledge, collective experience. And the third thing is, especially now, is to test the evidence, whatever that would look like. So that, I mean, great leaders obviously listen first and speak last. So to gather the resource of everyone in the room, and then to determine what is the best action moving forward, to test the evidence, test and test and test. I have a good friend here in Victoria who's a wonderful prosecutor. And anytime that he is charged to fulfill his professional duty, he argues for the opposite. In other words, if he's charged to prosecute someone, he'll argue for every reason why that person should be defended. So in other words, he takes care of all of his blind spots in that way. And he invites in experts to test his point of view. So that in no way is he being naive or how should we say, short-sighted, but rather is gathering the fullest possible resource in order to make the best and most informed and sober decision. So I think it's especially in that. I was talking with a man this morning, and he is a senior assistant deputy minister in our government. A wonderful man, just a wonderful, and a true leader. And what I appreciate him, his name is also Peter, what I appreciate in him is his humility, his vulnerability. And in the conversation, I said, you know, your assistant, your executive assistant is just so outstanding. And he said, yes, 70% of what he would do would be not possible without her. Why? Because as he said, she calls him out on all his BS. So this is a time when we want people to invite us, if we're in a position of authority and decision making, for people to feel free and welcome to call us out on those areas where we are short-sighted, when we are self-focused, when we are naive, because there is no room for that kind of xenophobic expression at this time or any time.
Okay, Peter, we're already going to go off script. So that leads me to the question of how do leaders stay open at this time when in many ways we're wanting to constrict. We're physically distanced. We're wanting to kind of get into this self-preservation mode. So how do we stay open as leaders? And then I'll get back on script, maybe.
Thank you. Well, I would say really to embrace our vulnerability. And what does vulnerability mean? Well, to be emotionally available, to embrace uncertainty, and fully to embrace and to engage into those situations where we cannot control the outcome. So that's vulnerability. And I think only in so doing can we be fully courageous. And what does courage mean? It means speaking from the heart. Core, cur, core, whatever the word, heart, agre, to deliver from the heart. Only when we're vulnerable to say, my goodness, I feel so confused, that there is so much ambiguity, there's so much paradox around us. I admit to that in myself. Now I can actually prepare myself to navigate through my own fear, which is self-imposed. Okay, and then to embrace courage. So I think first of all to admit to that, to admit I'm just as afraid as all of you. Oh, rather than putting up this wall, this block to say I can withstand anything. Absurd. No one has that capability. And as soon as we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, people will come to our support. Those who stand and say I can take care of anything, they put up a wall which prevents anyone from being accessible to them. When we're vulnerable, we invite people to come forth and to express their vulnerability, their challenge, their yeah, whatever, all the things that are facing them, the walls that are before them. And then in that collective, we can embrace each other in our collective wisdom, experience, and knowledge, and then again in concert come to a resolution that is the result of many people's experience, insight, intuition, and input.
Thank you, Peter. So our next question is, what is one communication secret you wish every leader knew?
Listen deeply. And the secret to that, I think, is first of all, we need to be deeply in tune with ourselves. And so I would say to get into a place of meditation with our breath in the pranayama. So we would breathe rhythmically in through the nose to a count of 4, out through the mouth to a count of 4, to get in that very, very centered place. In order to listen to someone else, we have to be first in tune and centered in our own being, to model that by example. So to come to that deep and peaceful state of, we would say, Tao in Buddhism and so forth, in that inner state, and then only then to be fully present to another as we are present to ourselves in that communion, and to listen without judgment, assumption, presumption, fully present. That is so critical, because everyone wants to be acknowledged. Everyone has that deep desire to be understood, to be valued, and to be significant. And when we give someone our full attention, not by imposition but by invitation, then they feel that they may show up with confidence, with courage, with candor. And so to find that, and to find it through the breath, will then enable us to be fully present and to be in that deep listening experience in a state of communion with those people we serve.
Thank you, Peter. So the leaders that we've been working with have been wondering, how, when, and what to communicate with their teams. So what would you suggest in terms of rhythm, cadence of communication with teams? What forms of different communication would you suggest for team leaders at this point in time?
Well, I have very limited wisdom. I'm watching, as I say, I suppose many of us are, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. And I think in so many ways, his behavior as a leader is exemplary in these times. Just my own opinion, but it seems that many people share that. Why is that? He speaks clearly. There's no hyperbole, there's no exaggeration. It's not Pollyanna by any means. Anything that he says will be conservative, will be tested in terms of its accuracy and measurable, well, whatever is measurable in the results that he is projecting, or models that he is contemplating. He speaks sincerely. It's always from the heart, from a place of compassion, of empathy, of deep care. He maintains a state of sobriety as a leader, and really invites people to, in a co-creative process, to find solutions. In other words, he would say that in times of struggle, of strife, those are the greatest times, the greatest opportunities for creativity, because adversity always invites opportunity for innovation, for discovery. And so to help people to, by the mode of his questioning, to say, what can we learn from this experience? How can we build our bonds even more closely in working together, and in an experience of community, to work through this, to move through this together, and truly in an experience of community in our human bonding? How can we put aside any kind of unilateral bias so that we welcome the full input of all of our community and build on that full resource? So I think in terms of communicating, clarity is essential, without exaggeration to either extent as to what would be the pitfall or what might be the possible gain in this time. To test all the evidence and to demonstrate that it has been tested, that it's not just out of a matter of opinion, but rather that it is out of rigor and diligence that we've come to these realistic numbers, and to constantly give to that testing, so that there are no assumptions, because moment to moment things can change, and to be rigorous in that, and as clear, if anything, understated than overstated in communicating with the team.
Thank you, Peter. So now I'm going to put you a little bit on the hot seat, which I think you'll find fun because you're so intellectual. If you were to give a message to the world at this time, what message would you want everybody to hear?
Despite the appearance, and it is more than just appearance, the gravity of the situation, the number of people who are suffering, ultimately the number of those people around the world who are actually losing their lives, and perhaps even more tragically, for the families of those people who perish, that they do not even have opportunity to stand by their loved ones at the time of their passing. The tragedy of that is just incalculable. That there is within all of this an opportunity. The world is coming together more closely. There is no room here for political borders, for national division, because this is affecting everyone inclusively. No one has exclusion to this process. And so actually there's an opportunity here, I think, to renew human values of community, global community, a global partnership, compassion and love for each other. It's interesting too that we've been talking, especially young people have been saying, oh my goodness, we have a 10-year or a 12-year window until we hit the tipping point in 2030 when the earth will come to a place where there's no further recovery, that we're just on a crash course for the end of humankind. But isn't it also interesting in this time that we're seeing, when we're talking about global warming and all these kinds of things, that, for example, these days, we can actually see fish in clear water in the canals of Venice, that the skies in Beijing are clear and blue, that the earth has restored itself in a very short time in measurable ways without the constant intrusion of our presence, in other words, CO2 emissions. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that there's a healing or evidence of a healing concurrent with so much tragedy and despair? So I think there are opportunities to build greater global community, to examine perhaps even our collective addiction, not for the whole world, but in many parts of the Western world anyway, our addiction to material and self-interest and selfishness, and to recognize that there's a golden time of transition which presents itself to us to really build a community of humaneness and humankind globally.
Beautiful. Thank you, Peter. So you've worked with me on speeches, and you've worked with a number of my colleagues and friends. What are some tips that you would give to leaders who are going on a Zoom call like this with their team in terms of how to get their messages out? What suggestions would you have?
Beautiful. Well, fundamentally, people support what they create. So in a Zoom call, what I would suggest, I mean, here am I speaking the whole time, what I would suggest is to lead with questions, not answers, to engage in dialogue and not coercion. So to ask questions which invite the team to participate in a co-creative process. Because where people have authorship, they will take ownership in their own behaviors. And to invite that collective, cooperative, co-creative process, not by prescription, but by being provocative. In other words, to give voice to others and to welcome their input in a concerted effort. I think that is so important. It's to ask those questions. The magic is always in the question. And the more specific, the clearer, the more compelling, the more inspiring the question, the more wonderful the response will be.
So I want to dig deeper a little bit on this. So ask questions is what I heard there. What else would you suggest? Like, would you suggest, we've worked on strategy consulting together, how would you suggest vision, values, action plans? Because, business can continue.
Absolutely. So if that were the case, first of all, I would like to explore the interest of all the participants. In other words, what's most important to them? When we acknowledge their interest, they feel seen, they will show up. If we were to do that, and then to say, the next thing is having that to begin the call and to say, so what is the goal to which we aspire? And let's do that on a collective basis. What is the goal? Try it to a timeline, to measurable result. What is the intention of this call? In other words, what's the call to action? We're not there just to be prescriptive and to speak at our team, but rather to enlist them to activity. So what is the call to action? How does this excite their activity? And I would say the fourth thing is to be able to distill the essence of those three questions down to one statement. So what is the essence of what we are about to do right now? Having done that, let's determine where are we exactly? What is our current reality? What is our current reality? And in most clear and measurable terms. So we know what is baseline, where we are right now. Then the thing is to ask ourselves, what are our dissatisfied needs? Dissatisfaction drives change. The third thing would be, what would great look like? From the place that we are today, what would great look like? The fourth would be, what would be our tactical objectives when we achieve that great? The fifth would be, what would be our strategic imperatives, our governing principles, so that which will inform all of our decisions, all of our behaviors, all of our actions moving forward, so that we know that we're doing the right thing in the right way with the right people for the right reasons to the right outcome. And then from having done that, now we have a map, and now we can actually put together the strategy to meet those specific requirements. Does that work?
That works, and that is very clear. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
So you've gotten me to do some crazy things in terms of developing speaking skills. What is one of your craziest speaking tips? I'm thinking of one. I'll just give an example, and you'll probably use something else. But when you had me put my head against the wall and feel into my belly to make sure I really felt what I was communicating. So what are some of your unorthodox speaking tips for leaders?
Right. Well, thank you so much. Well, just first of all to say that people, we've heard the old expression, people maybe forget what you said, they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And we have to feel our meaning in order to generate a contagious resonance with our listener that they will feel it also. So oftentimes people will speak from the, so to say, from the neck up. The words it might be a fabulously crafted text, but it's delivered without any heart, without any conviction, without any kinetic passion. I mean, arguably, we've heard or experienced performances of Mozart or Shakespeare that were less than great because the performance was poor. Nothing wrong with the text. The text was created by geniuses, but the performance was just abysmal. So the performance, or the way that we deliver the message, is equally important to the message. So coming back to your question, I would say best thing to do is to get into a large room and stand at the end of that room and speak to the other wall. In this house, that would be, I don't know, from my living. This is my living room, and I'm looking at way over there to the kitchen. We'll say that's 60 feet or something of that sort. And I'm going to speak my message in two ways. I'm going to speak it in a stage whisper. What does that mean? I'm going to speak like this. Now, when I speak a stage whisper, what does that mean? I have to engage my diaphragm because I have the absence of tone, so I'm going to throw it from my diaphragm. I'm going to use teeth, tongue, and lips so vigorously to explode the consonants and propel the vowels, and that the sound has to hit my hard palate right behind my nose, otherwise it won't be heard at all. So I'm practicing in that way. And then what I do after that, and notice when I do that, how I compress and concentrate the energy of my delivery, and also how it enlivens my body when I do that. You know, I can't be stolid. I can't be sort of just a blob. No, when I'm using that much energy without vocal tone, I really I'm animated from the core of my being. I'm speaking like this. And then I practice that. And what I do is, having practiced it several times, I then introduce vocal tone. And the difference is just enormous because we notice that our face is more animated. Everything about us, our energy, our energetic presence is intensified through that. Not falsely, no, quintessentially, from the essence, from the core of who we are. We show up. And that all together in our energetic presence, in the way we deliver the message, with conviction, with commitment, with the infusion of that concentrated energy and passion, that is what will generate a feeling correspondingly in the listener.
Thank you, Peter. We have a question from Chris J. Chris, I'm actually wondering if you could please come off mute and show your video and perhaps ask Peter the question yourself. I think it's a great question.
Yeah, no worries. My audio, it's working. Everybody can hear.
It's working.
Hi, Chris. Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to see you.
No worries. Thank you so much. I appreciate any type of education at all.
Me too.
And the videoing the new world, I guess, we live in. It's a great experience. So, no, I just, my question is I've done like the ... training. I kind of developed it. I call it the ... training. So like the pauses and the, you know, you do like making money, don't you? ... You know, like things like that, right? Where you can guide the conversation into, you know, what they're going to answer. So my question is how much of the conversation is actually content compared to, you know, body language and tone? Because I find more people listen to the body language and the tone more than what they actually, you know, of the content. So
beautiful. Thank you. That's true. Over 90% of communication is nonverbal. That's true. And rapport is developed between people, not with words, but in body language. Milton Erickson, a great psychiatrist, if you could check him out on the internet, Milton Erickson, Erickson. And he did a whole discovery of people, how people engage, and he called it matching and mirroring. So in other words, when we want to engage someone, and we'll call that entrainment, we are actually matching their energy. So if someone would be rather quiet and introspective and so forth, and say, you know, gosh, life is really, really hard. If we want to match that, we would match it in terms of their energy, in terms of their chosen language. We would say, yeah, it is difficult. Life is difficult. They feel seen and heard when we do that. We are not mimicking them. We are certainly not mocking them. No, there is a demonstration of chosen empathy. We are feeling with them. And then eventually we start to match them, and they will match our energy, and the conversation will evolve, because not we have to follow to lead. We have to listen to be heard. We have to understand to be understood. And once that rapport is initiated and then developed back, eventually we start to see this play back and forth to each other. Now, you talked about the ... So please look out, please be so kind to take a look at Milton Erickson. The ... I think it's important to ask questions which simply do not invite an answer of yes and no. I mean, like, accomplished lawyers will do that. They say, on this given evening at 9 o'clock in the evening, is it not so that you encountered so and so? And the only response can be yes or no. Well, there's no creativity in that. People support what they create. So how do we invite authorship? In which case then we ask a question which invites them to give a fulsome response. You know, if we were to ask questions, for example, I remember one time I was coaching this team, and they would go to conferences, and in a conference they might meet 5,000 people, and this was a team to provide service, and typically they would come back with, you know, with 1 or 2 leads. It was a great cost and not much return. So I suggested to them this: go into the conference, use the same set of questions, and first of all, get yourself to a place where you are not being prescriptive inside. In other words, you're not there to coerce the other person's behavior. You have a curiosity for their point of view and no assumption as to what you expect. There has to be that sense of care. I believe the only things we get to keep are the things we give away. So we're coming with a place of generosity, a place of support, a place of service. And so these are the questions that they asked. First question was, just in meeting someone at this conference, by the way, is this your first time at this conference? Okay. Or what brings you here today? So who can know? So the second question is, please tell me about your organization in such a way that I, as a novice, may truly understand it. So we really elevate them if they can then express and talk about their business in that way. What's working? Third question, what's working well in your organization today? Fourth question, if you could change only one thing in your organization, what would it be? Fifth question might be, do you have the resource within your organization to make that one fundamental change? If they did, they would. And then, now having asked 5 questions, then the last thing was, oh, could we have a follow-up conversation? I believe that we may have some support and to offer to your organization to help you to meet that most critical issue. So the 5 out of 6 questions were all about them. It's discovering the interest of the other person. What's most important to them? Their priorities. Where do they invest their time, their energy? What are their pain points? It's all about them. And then how may we serve them? I think to engage anybody, there's a 3-part, I hope I'm answering the question. I'm talking a lot here. Okay, so if we want to engage anyone in any situation, parent to child, friend to friend, professional to client, whatever, it's a 3-part process. What is the interest of the other person? What's most important to them? The second thing, what is our offering? Could be a product, could be service, could be wisdom, could be counsel, could be support, as it's tailored to their interest, like a glove to a hand. And how do we anchor that? When they have a perceived benefit, when we offer to their interest. So the critical path, their interest, our offering, their benefit.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was a really practical response. We have
Thank you,
another
Peter.
great question, and it'll be our last question of the day from Shauna Giltner. So Shauna, I wonder if you could come off mute and show off your video and ask your very, very important question. And thanks for the great question too, Chris.
Excellent question.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Pleasure to see you today. Thank you for coming on the call.
Absolutely. Sorry I was late. What was my question? Right. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Didn't mean to.
It was really good, Shauna. How do you get the team?
Right, exactly. So how do you get the team to engage when they appear to be caught in fear and or they're spiraling? Right. So they're not even hearing the question, right? I can ask 5 questions and I get no answers. Right? They don't admit to struggling, but you know they are. You can tell. I mean, even remotely through video, you can tell this is like they're just not hearing me. They're in some cave somewhere, hunkered down for survival and operating from a automatic space. There's no thought. There's no engagement. They're just taking care of business.
Exactly. Well, I think going back to that fundamental statement, people support what they create. I think to ask a question, it's more challenging, I think, remotely than it is, for example, within a room. But even to go around the room and just to say to people, at this point, how are you feeling? How individually, give each person a chance to say, how are you feeling with this current situation, with the crisis that we face? How best could we support each other to move through our fears and to show up with courage? What would you wish from me as a leader to support you? What would be a meaningful way that I could show up to you to meet your interests in a way that is meaningful to you now? I think it's all about asking those questions. And because, and even I would say the other thing too is just to admit to your own experience of fear. It's so powerful when we have the courage to admit to our own vulnerability. And when we do so by example, people say, oh my goodness, that person in that position of authority, and they're just as scared in their boots as I am. Oh my goodness, does that ever give me confidence to be able to show up equally to that? Do you agree to that? Does that seem to make sense? And I remember working with a team, and it's all about how we show up and how we invite. Again, it's providing questions, not directing people, but inviting them to respond to these questions together in an experience of community. And I was working with this team in Lake Tahoe last December. This is a real estate team, a fantastic team actually. And typically, in their situation, someone would come in and just prescribe everything. Okay, so their PowerPoint and all this kind of thing, and how meaningless that is. So rather than that, we started off by saying, going around the room, I asked everybody, and this is going back to what you may do in your organization as well, just as to go around, please tell us your name, your title, or whatever your position, and in one word, what is your expectation of this leadership forum? So you might say with your team, what is your expectation of this call today? In one word, what would great look like to you? And then the next thing that we did was we paired off people and say, in pairs, how would you like to be respected and remembered? We went back and forth with that. And then we got into groups of 4, and we said, in groups of 4, so we built community from the inside out. And the question was, when am I at my best? What will I never do? What one word best defines me? Now, these are different questions that you might ask, but it would be somehow to say, you get on the call, how's everyone feeling today? How are you? Let's go each person. How are you feeling? And when they respond, a person says, you know, I'm feeling pretty anxious. You use their word. What does anxious look like to you? Does anyone else feel anxious today? And so now there's an experience of community. We're revealing ourselves with candor, with vulnerability. What could I do to serve you best so that everyone could show up in these very, very challenging times? What have you discovered in yourself in terms of resource or resourcefulness or tools or skills that you never knew before? Oh, what a powerful statement that is. In this current time, what opportunities present ourselves in such a way that we've never experienced them before? Is this valuable? So it's always in the question, because adversity always offers opportunity. When things are going smoothly, we don't pay attention. But when things are really rough, then Nelson Mandela said, and that would be a powerful statement. Nelson Mandela said, I never lose. I win or I learn. What have we learned as a team that we never experienced before? How can we find a different way of doing things and let them co-create that? If they create it, they will take ownership in it. If they have authorship, they will take ownership. So invite them to show up and to say and to discover the ways, the behaviors, the tools by their own reckoning, which will have value. If they have authorship, they will take ownership. And so oftentimes I think that when we're in a position of leadership, we think, oh, we have to solve it all. No, let them solve it. Where are we now? Where would we like to be? What are our dissatisfied needs? How are we going to get there? Let them figure that out. Fantastic. Now they're in the game. It's so powerful. It's always in the brilliance of asking questions and inviting them to co-create the process. Please comment. I hope that I feel very, I'm honored to be the one speaking, but I feel my own temptation would be, I'd like to hear much more what you all have to say. I have one little bit of information here, tiny bit of wisdom. If we were to gather this in the room, the sum total would be far greater than the parts. You know, I think that's, anytime I give a course, I have a leadership course. I've given it to hundreds of people in this government and to other companies, Enbridge, TELUS, and so forth. And I'd say everything you need to know about leadership is already within you. My job here is just to provide focus and ask great questions, and you will co-create it. I mean, as Michelangelo said, the image is in the stone, he just takes away the excess. Plato in the 5th book of his Republic would say, everything, you can't teach anyone anything they didn't already know, for this would be as to give sight to blind eyes. So I said, within this forum, we're going to build on the full resource of everyone in this room, your wisdom, your knowledge, your insight, intuition, experience, and so that we collectively will co-create tools to increase in our leadership effectiveness. Well, everyone's in the room now. So it's not just one person talking. Now we have everybody's wisdom. Oh my God. And the energy is just explosive.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that beautiful response. And Jessica comments that one introduction that she's used that is borrowed from Indigenous people rather than a title is, who do you want to be known as? And I think that's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful way to conclude.
It is, absolutely, yes.
So Peter, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and share your wisdom today. The point of today was for you to speak because we want to learn from you. So thank you so much. And this will be available on YouTube, on the Awaken Company YouTube. So please check that out. And please share with whoever you think it would serve. And Peter, you've got great hair.
Catherine always, she has great hair. She has big hair.